still okay with that. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Phoebe Morad. I'm Executive Director of Lutherans Restoring Creation, and I welcome you all here tonight, and I'm really excited to hear what's going on across our synods. And for those of you who don't even know what that word is, we're going to learn exactly what the word synod means, because I will admit to you that when I first knew of Lutherans Restoring Creation, before I ever even figured out what the term ELCA, what all those letters meant. So it doesn't matter if you know all the ins and outs of church language. We're going to go over some of that tonight, but overall, we like to work together and know what's working for you all. So that's why we're here, and that is why Lutherans Restoring Creation exists. So as we get settled, I am going to ask you to tell us in the chat who you are, where you're coming in from. If you know the original Earth Keepers of the land on which you stand, please add that in the chat as well. What house of faith you're a part of, that sort of thing, whatever else you'd like to add to the chat. And our Lutherans Restoring Creation acknowledgement is, because we're from all over the place here, we have one that's a little bit less place-based and more knowledge-based. So I'm going to share that. And as I do so, I'm going to ask too that maybe if anyone in the chat wants to offer to share a land acknowledgement from where you are based at our next call. We had been in the habit of doing that for a while, and I really liked it. I like to learn about other places. And for some of you, I know it was a challenge then to, okay, I'm going to write one of these. I'm going to find out more about the people where I live in my community. So I encourage you and challenge you to put that in the chat, and maybe we'll have a nice lineup for the future. But for now, I will read our Lutherans Restoring Creation acknowledgement. As we live, work, and worship in the land that is now called the United States, Lutherans Restoring Creation recognizes that we do so on land that was stolen from Indigenous peoples. As we are called to restore creation, we are also called to restore right relationship with one another. As we join in this holy vocation of loving our neighbor, we honor all our Indigenous siblings who have been companions of the lands, waters, and beings of Turtle Island since time immemorial. We charge our community to learn about the original and continuous stewards of the land upon which we exist. We lament legacies of violence, cultural genocide, and displacement of Indigenous peoples and communities, committing ourselves to hearing and speaking the truth of that history and its ongoing effects. May we gather faithfully in mind, body, and spirit, so that we may mend what has been broken and embody Christ's gospel of abundant life. And with that, I am going to hand the baton over to my lovely colleague, Gabrielle Earle. And I'm so grateful that some of the work that they've been able to do has been making relationships with more people that you haven't even been able to meet, right, Gabrielle? I mean, in the flesh. None of us have any idea how tall the other is. Like, we could all be mermaids on this call. We wouldn't know. Anyways, that is the other funny thing about this weird Zoom world we live in. But thankfully, you've been able to talk, and now we're able to hear from all of these folks. So thanks, Gabrielle, for inviting everyone here.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm Gabrielle. Many of you have heard from me in some capacity or another. I'm on a lot of email threads. But tonight, we're gathered here to talk about synods and the role they can play in creation care. So bear with me as I put up a quick little presentation. This presentation may be a review for a lot of people, and it might seem very obvious to other people. But I will be honest and say that I'm not a cradle Lutheran. And so it's important for me to establish the vocabulary we're talking about. So if this is review, sit back and relax. If not, I'm excited you're here. So like I said, I'm not a cradle Lutheran, and I feel like a lot of people did not come necessarily to the ELCA by picking a denomination, but by picking a church. So as you hopefully know, the church can be a really great place for starting a creation care ministry or a creation care community, but it is not the only place. A synod is a usually geographical area that hosts lots of different churches, sometimes in smaller groups called conferences or something like that, but it has bishop and a staff, and it is there to support the churches within its area. Sometimes this is a state, sometimes this is a section of a state, sometimes it's even just a metropolitan area, but a synod there is there to support the churches. Okay, we also have 9 regions, less important for the scope of our call, but they're there. And all of this is part of the denomination known as the ELCA, from the church body all the way up to the top, which we call churchwide. Here's another visual representation of that. It's quite cluttered, as you can see. There are 65 synods total. So as we talk about churchwide, which is the largest scope level of our church, they made a social statement on Earth's climate crisis in 2023. And I wanted to pull a quote from that, which is that the ELCA challenges all expressions of this church to witness publicly to the climate crisis and walk the talk. Okay, I will say this social statement is great, and it really does a good job of covering the complexity of the climate crisis. So I was really hard-pressed to just pull one quote. But I pulled this one because it emphasizes that all expressions of the church, so not just an individual congregation and not just the top level, but all expressions of this church are called to walk the talk in terms of the climate crisis. I'm also pulling this out to show you that there's no such thing as an executive order in the ELCA. So churchwide is hopefully expressing our values that we have expressed from the very bottom in that flow of power from the congregation up to the synod, up to churchwide. So then, what does walking the talk look like for our synods in this church? So as of right now, for my data that I've collected, 26% of synods out of our 65 have passed specific resolutions to reduce greenhouse gases, on par with the IPCC, reducing 50% of greenhouse gases by 2030. 43% have an active creation care ministry on the synod level, whether they meet quarterly or monthly or once in a while. They are meeting and doing something. And more than that, about 56% have a specific commitment to creation care, either resources on their website or a covenant with creation, something like that. So this, I think, shows us 2 things. One, that we are on a wave that is sort of about to crest. Like, we're at this very critical moment where we're about to become the norm. And what this also shows us is that there's lots of work to be done in the synod still, that there is more, and hopefully we can walk away with a sense of empowerment that there are lots of people doing things, and that we can also engage at the synod level. So we're going to go over some of the models that a synod care for creation team might look like, because we want to be open to how this might look different in your context for your synod. And we don't want, it would not make sense for all synod teams to be identical. But that being said, there are about 3 models that we have seen. So the first one is a synod team that is supported by staff members. So one person with a full-time position or close to full-time position gets creation care duties for their synod, and they can act as an organizer. They get to build relationships. They get to be a resource for congregations, which is great if you have the resources. It's pretty rare, but it's really exciting when somebody is able to have that time. There's also an intersectional ministry option. So what that would be is that knowing that a lot of our justice issues are intersectional, that racial justice, environmental justice, gender justice, all of these things fold into each other. If there is an existing ministry that is taking on social justice issues, that creation care can fit really well into that and often is a part of that. And last, I think probably the most common model for a creation care team is that there are passionate pastors or laity. There's a bunch of people in a region. They decide, let's not do this alone. Let's do it together. They meet regularly, and they use the synod as their sort of organizing zone. So although they are working with the synod, usually they're reporting back to the synod, they are not directly watched over or run by the synod. So we'll see definitely a couple of examples of that tonight with the creation care teams that are going to share with us. With our creation care teams, like I said, we always want it to fit in our context, and we want that if none of these work, you find the model that works for you. Phoebe often says that we want to be like water, so if you hit an obstacle, you just flow around it and find something that does work for you. That being said, if you don't have a creation care team, or if you don't know if you have a creation care team, first of all, we can help you figure out whether there's people in your area. But if you don't have a creation care team, that does not mean that there's necessarily a lack of interest. There could be a lot of congregations who are really passionate about creation care, but are all doing it on their own. So our goal would be to connect you with those other congregations, whether that's just one down the road who you can share ideas with, or whether that means there's 10 of you, and then we can get you on a call to start thinking about how you can organize in a larger way. All right, so if you are wanting to organize in a larger way, I'm happy to show you. If I switch my screen over, can you all see that? Great. So we have a new document, which is Becoming a Creation Care Synod. And this is a self-organizing kit. If you do not have a synod team already and you would like to get one, or if you know a synod or somebody who's passionate about doing this work, we now have a kit that is up on our website that has information about how you can start this in whatever context you're in. It is a pretty large document, so I won't go through it, but I will drop a link in the chat. I just posted it up on the website tonight for you to take a look through. Are there any questions on any of that before I pass it off to actual synod teams who are going to tell us what they've been up to? Great. Okay.
I was just going to mention too that as you all look at the kit, let us know if it's a living document and it's easy to change. We haven't printed a million of these. We would love to know some responses from you as well. So let us know if you find things or know of things that we should have updated in there too. So
yes, thank you for that. All right, without further ado, we're going to enter sort of a section where we'll hear from several different synod green teams or creation care teams. So I'm going to pass the mic off to Karen from New Jersey Synod Green Team. Is that the name of your ministry? I hope I got it right.
Sort of.
And I'm going to let you take it away. You tell us what you're called and what you are able to do.
Yeah, so we're actually the Care of Creation New Jersey Synod Justice Group, and I was just looking at your categories. Can everybody see this? Okay.
yes.
I think we started as intersectional ministry, but I think we're becoming a gathering of representatives, or maybe we're somewhere in between, because we started, just figure out how to do this, as one of the justice groups out of many justice groups. There was, as you said, one on housing justice, mental health justice, racial justice, gender justice, and we were talking about the intersections between those. And our group, I was asked to convene, was really just people interested in creation care, and then talking with all of the groups about the intersections between them. And our first steps were just to reach out and find out who's interested in care of creation. Let's share some ideas. Let's find out what different churches are doing. But as we started talking, we realized we really wanted to go bigger and do something synod-wide if we could. And because our current bishop had been my pastor about a decade ago, I reached out to her and said, hey, what would you think about having a bishop's challenge on creation care as your next bishop's challenge at her final one before she's outgoing, knowing she'd done one on world hunger and some other justice issues. And she said yes. So we went full speed ahead and started planning a synod-wide challenge for 24-25, which we're actually going to launch in May, next month, couple weeks. And we did a soft pre-launch Zoom in January to just talk about what our congregation's doing, a call kind of like this. What are people doing across New Jersey that we could build on in this larger challenge? So in a couple weeks at our May 11th assembly, we're going to launch this Bishop's Challenge, Caretakers of God's Good Creation, which is Bishop Bartholomew's name for it that she came up with. And the idea is going to be to challenge every congregation in the synod to form a green team if they don't have one, or revitalize one, or expand one, or, re-energize it in some way, and then take on at least one sustainability initiative during that year. We hope it'll be more than one. We hope it'll be one in a number of areas like building grounds, worship and education programs, activism and advocacy, but at least one. And then we're going to be launching it with kind of a skit and like tabling activity at the assembly with prayers for creation, and give them each a little, hopefully very green swag bag with a tree to take back and plant and some compost samples, a t-shirt that the advocacy group and the bishops group designed for it using the Luther Rose, which we came up with a kind of a boring one and they turned into something kind of cute. So hopefully that'll work. And then the idea is that as the congregations go out from the assembly, they'll be submitting actions. And then we've been finalizing like a web-based resource for them of ideas in all of these areas and links and congregations that have done something in this area. So they can reach out to someone and say, hey, you have XYZ, or you've done a zero waste coffee hour. How did you do that? Or, that kind of thing. So they know people who've done different things. And the method we've been using is we met monthly at the beginning, and then it started out really strong with all these justice groups. Then of course, schedules got in the way. So it was monthly, semi-monthly. But since we started this challenge, we've been meeting every couple of weeks, really preparing to launch and making sure everything gets done. And I think, Gabrielle, you'd asked, like, how are we doing it? So we have like a project plan and some signups. We're using Google Docs and meeting every couple weeks. And a few of the people on the team, this is why I think it's moving more toward a gathering of representatives, have really stepped up. I had one member of my team, just a lay person, who reached out to every New Jersey congregation and at least tried to talk to them about what they've done. And are you doing this? Are you recycling? And this little word cloud is based on all of her notes for what they said they were doing. And I will tell you, when she reported out on her, it was the most rejuvenating meeting we ever had, because you feel like you're kind of in your own corner trying to do something. And it often feels like you're in molasses, and to hear that a lot of people were trying to do good things, it was really cool. And our thought is, as we go through the year, we're going to continue to meet every month. We're going to roll out highlights through our Synod e-blasts, highlighting congregations that maybe submit things or that are doing things, maybe do some Zooms like we did in January, but topical, like, oh, so you want to start a community garden, so you want to do solar, from people who've done it to share information with people who haven't done it. So it kind of gives some scaffolding to the approach as we go through the year. And the last thing I'll show you is one of our members of our group decided that for the skit, we should be superheroes. And his brother is an illustrator who apparently worked with Marvel. So he came up with this. Let me see if I can show this picture. Where'd it go? Sorry. Of the stewards of the earth. We got to pull this off. I don't know how we're going to pull this off. So he took, I don't know, different superheroes and created his own. So one of them is Solar, and there's Green Rose and Recycle. They'll have funny names. So we're going to hopefully portray them in a very comical way. Obviously, we're not going to be dressing in a cow bikini, but we're going to be talking about, plant-based eating and solar power and, Shorebird. She's on shore health and all kinds of things. So we're going to dress up sort of to present the challenge in May. And that really will be a gathering of representatives, because I don't know if that's intersectional ministry, or maybe it is, but that's what we're working on. And hopefully we'll have a great challenge year and then have something to report back through Act Out Loud, through LRC in a year for all those congregations. Thank you. I'll stop sharing, I guess.
Incredible. Thank
We're
you,
so
Karen.
excited. We're so excited.
What a creative way to show the artistic expression of, what you're able to do on your synod. That's so cool. I have not ever seen that before.
No, we hadn't either. So we're working with it. We're going with it.
I love it.
Great.
Well, thank you, Karen. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And I am going to pass it off to the next person I see on my screen, which is Noni Strand from the Central State Synod.
Okay, thank you. It's great to be here with all of you. Karen, that is so inspiring. Also, there's some members of our table who are here, so that is great. They can chime in as well. I was just reading Phoebe's note. Our Lutherans Restoring Creation mission table was formed in 2015 by action of the Synod Assembly. A mission table is basically, it's kind of like a synod committee, but it doesn't have all the hoops that you have to jump through, and you don't get any funding, and you don't have to, we're a gathering of volunteers. We have no synod staff on our mission table, but it has been a good model for us because it gives us flexibility to do our thing, but also remain connected to the synod so that they know what we're up to. But we formed, and it was just volunteers that came together right after that Synod Assembly meeting. And I see we have a couple of our charter members who are on the call tonight, Jane Meyercourt and Larry Erickson. And then we also have some new folks that have come, Keith Mundy, who's joined us in the last few years. So it's we meet monthly. We at first met by phone because that was before everybody was used to Zoom. And now we meet monthly by Zoom, and we've been meeting monthly since we started. When we first got going, we did a series of workshops in different geographical areas around the synod, since we're both Kansas and Missouri. So instead of asking people to drive to all over the place, we went to them, and that worked out really well. Then COVID hit, so we've kind of shifted a bit and done more online. We do have a really good response when we do retreats. We had a great retreat last year, and it was thrilling. Phoebe was there, and so many good things. So we need to get another retreat scheduled. But some of the things that we do regularly is we table at various events, especially Synod Assembly and the Bishop's Convocation. We often have a resolution at the Synod Assembly of some kind, so that we are keeping creation care and climate justice in front of people. We were part of the group that did the memorial to the churchwide assembly about the greenhouse gas emissions. And as a part of trying to fulfill that, we also did a cohort of congregations using the cool congregations information and the calculator from Interfaith Power and Light. And that kind of then morphed into what we call now the Creation Care Collaboration. And that group meets monthly. It's just anybody who wants to come. Some people are farther along down the path. Others are just getting started in their congregations. But we do a lot of sharing. Sometimes we have speakers. It depends on kind of the interest of the group. So that's really group driven. And that's open to anybody in the synod. Plus, we have a number of people from different synods that come, like Susan comes from Maryland, and we've got a couple of people from Arkansas that come. So it's just a good way to support each other and learn from each other. We also, this year, one of the things we did was we put together a creation care plan, and so each month of the year, we curated resources because there's so much out there. So we put together a plan so that every month in the area of worship, education, buildings and grounds, personal discipleship, and social action and advocacy, the 5 areas of congregational life from LRC, we have some suggestions for each month of the year. And so that's been a good way for us to be able to kind of hone it down and make it a little bit more manageable for people to access resources. Plus, there's tons on the LRC website, and we try to connect them with other groups like Interfaith Power and Light and Creation Justice Ministries and all those groups. We were fortunate to also be a part of a 4-synod group that worked on the Earth Charter. And if Keith wants to say a few words about that. And then we work closely with KIFA, which is our Kansas Interfaith Action, for doing advocacy on, especially on the statewide level, and Interfaith Power and Light on the national level. And then this year, one of the things we're going to kick off at our Synod Assembly is a more intentional partnership of congregations with our LRC roots and the Central State Synod congregations and ministry sites, so that we have a more intentional group that we can communicate with. We've touched a lot of congregations, but we don't have like a kind of a list of everybody. So that's one of the things we'll be working on this year. The plan is something that we can adjust each year so that people can have access to that. And so those are some of the things that we've been doing. And I don't know if there's any of my folks that want to add anything there. Okay, well, that's a down and dirty from the Central States.
And I keep adding stuff in the chat. So you all, as you're speaking, if you mention stuff, I will try to find it and add it to the chat.
Oh, and I'll put a link to our plan so people can just see the kind of how we did that, if that's helpful.
Great. Thank you so much, Noni. You are a superstar, and I'm glad that you got to talk a little bit about what you all are up to. I'm going to switch quickly over to Susan from Delaware, Maryland.
Hi, I have a couple of things to share. So I'll share my screen. And I'm going to go to full screen. And I'm kind of a visual person. And so taking the first letter of the 5 different areas that Lutherans Restoring Creation deals with, the D stands for discipleship at home and at work. And so starting with this, I'll just say that we have created a resolution for our Synod Assembly in June. And this actually asks congregations to put down on paper what they have done already. And we're hoping that there's enough tools out there for people to estimate what their reduction in greenhouse gases are. But if there aren't, and they can't do that aspect of it, then we're expecting to receive information from congregations and then be able to translate that using the tools that hopefully will be available. The LRC group dealing with this particular thing is also looking for ways to get information from the congregation. So I am a member of that team. And so I hope they will be able to give, concrete things for congregations to measure. The E is education. And I put our little Zoom planning retreat that we had in January up here because we did intend to have it in person, but then we had a snowstorm. So we switched to Zoom and it was great. We had some information about recycling that a person had brought. And then we also learned a lot about advocacy because the Maryland 3-month or 2.5 months of legislators getting together is right there at the beginning of the year. It just ended in April. And so we were taught about, going on the website, keeping track of legislation that's passing through. Buildings and grounds is the next thing. I would say that Delaware and Maryland Synod does this probably more than anything else. We try to get trees in the ground in congregations around the Synod. And so that's really what our budget goes for is, planting trees, native trees. PW, public witness, yes, public witness also goes for the advocacy. And plus we've created a little video to honor Deacon Laura Heller. Some of you may know her name. She passed away this past year. And we're going to honor her at the Synod Assembly and call attention to creation care and all that she did for promoting the idea of creation care all across the Synod. And then the W is worship. We're going to advertise all of the materials for the season of creation that's later in the year. And so that's all I'll say about that. So there you go.
Thank you, Susan. I feel like so much is bubbling up for me right now, but I will, for the sake of time, I will save all my thoughts and cross gears for our later Q&A. I am now going to switch over to Luke Peterson from the Northwest Synod of Wisconsin. Luke, I'm glad you can be here with us. Go ahead.
Yes, well, my name is Luke Peterson, and I serve as the chair for the creation care team of the Northwest Synod of Wisconsin. I'm also a synodically authorized minister. I serve 2 rural parishes here in West Central Wisconsin. I think our team, we kind of began as like an overall just broad justice team. I think back when I started as a minister in 2020, then we kind of gradually, became more specialized, like creation care, racial justice, reconciling ministries, hunger, and so forth. And we put through two resolutions so far. The 2021 Synod Assembly had a resolution in support of creation care. And 2022, a resolution in care of creation green teams, congregational green teams. Now, like I said, we're fairly, new at this, but we've had a lot of help, a lot of assistance from our good friends and our colleagues in the Northeast Minnesota Synod. They've been at this for, I think, at least a decade, if not more, and they've been a great help to us. And members of our team for the past 2 years have been part of the planning team for the Equal Faith Summit, which is Northeast Minnesota and St. Paul area Synod, and now our Synod, Northwest Wisconsin. And I was able to attend this year. It was on April 6th at First Lutheran Church in Duluth. And I was told that they had record attendance. So it was very, very well attended. Now, besides the resolutions, our creation care team, we meet monthly on Zoom. Zoom works best for us because we're spread out over a fairly large rural synod. So as much as we like to be able to be in person, it's easier just to kind of organize it via Zoom. And one thing we did in January was for the green teams, we decided to have a synod-wide green team meeting. So anybody who had a green team or anybody who was just interested or curious could join in this meeting. And it was, I thought it was like a good cross-pollination event. People just kind of shared stories, experiences, and kind of get the creative juices flowing, so to speak. And our synod also has a justice newsletter titled Just Love, Just Act. And so members of our team contribute their publications to this. And as well as that, members of our team have also, myself included, have written for Green Blades Rising, which is Northeast Minnesota Synod's newsletter. And we've written for the Preaching Roundtable, which has like eco reflections on the lectionary text for each Sunday. I've written at least 3 reflections so far in the past couple of years or so. And I've usually had those also published in our Just Love, Just Act newsletter. I can also say that Eco Faith, one of our team members, had a presentation on solar arrays because his church just last year converted their entire system to solar. He's very, very knowledgeable on this topic, and he's done a number of presentations on it. And I think looking forward, we're kind of hoping to have like a conference/green team get together at one of our Bible camps this year for people just to get together in person. This too are kind of modeling after Northeast Minnesota because they have a retreat, a 2-day retreat. So we're kind of modeling that a little bit after our friends over there. And another goal I kind of put forward just at our last meeting was maybe we could also be a pollinator synod, which again came from one of the sessions at Eco Faith. They are a pollinator synod. And that might be a resolution, not for this year, but maybe for the following year. You put that forward as a resolution for our next Synod Assembly. And otherwise, I think we're just hoping to continue to grow and continue to encourage congregations who want to have green teams and try to help them out any way they can. And what we kind of emphasize that green teams, it varies by congregation, it depends on the context. So what works for one church might not work for the other. So just have to know, you have to know your context, have to know your people to determine what's the best route forward for your green team. And I think that pretty much covers what we've been up to for the past couple of years and our goals going forward.
Thanks, Luke. It was great to hear. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Great to hear from you. All right, I'm going to move right along, and I'm going to invite Meg Nielsen.
Well, hi, everybody. Glad to be here tonight. And I'm a deacon in the South Central Synod of Wisconsin, recently retired. Not that that seems to make any difference, but because you still do things. But I've been on the chair of the Green Team, the Care for Creation team in the South Central Synod of Wisconsin for about 2 years now. And it's a team that meets monthly, and it's been around for a long time. I was on it about 10 or 12 years ago, and was a member for several years then when I was in parish ministry, and then went off of that team for a while, and now just recently have come back on. So it's a team that's been around for a long time, and it's has been very active in the past. And then as teams do, there's sort of an ebb and flow there. When I was on it before, we did a lot of things with interstate power and light, and we did cool congregations. I heard somebody else mention that, and we worked with that for a while. And we've been blessed to have on our team now a couple of kind of high interest people. One of them is lead meteorologist at WKOW television station in Madison, Wisconsin, Bob Lindmeyer. And Bob has put together a PowerPoint presentation, and he's done a lot of presentations in the past several years, many years, and has really lifted up this whole idea of caring for creation within our synod. And the other person that's sort of a high profile person is Cindy Crane, who is the Lutheran Office for Public Policy advocate in Wisconsin. And she's also part of our team. And we share a page with the Synod advocacy team on the Synod website. So, and there's just any number of good things that you can find there. But just in the past couple of years, and I think that's what I'd rather focus on tonight, we've done some interesting things. We've become interested in Church of the Wild events. And starting in October of 2022, we had our first Church of the Wild event at several different locations within the Synod. And then that really, several of them were quite well attended, so that we did that again in 2023 in the spring, kind of in conjunction with Earth Day. And this year, Bethel Lutheran Church in downtown Madison, which is a large congregation and sponsor of Bethel Horizons out in the country, they are doing, they're partnering with the Synod and the Synod with our Care for Creation team. And they're doing a Wild Church event on May 4th out at Bethel Horizons. And so far we have 50 adults, I think, registered, and 8 children registered for that event. And so we're really pleased with how that's going. And it will include the Wild Church time to wander and wonder in the wilderness on the trails of Bethel Horizons, and then a free lunch, which they did get a grant for, a Bethel Horizons grant, I believe, and free lunch afterwards. And Wild Church finishes with a communion event, and a time when people can share objects or things that they have found in nature that spoke to them. So looking forward to that in May, and hoping and praying for good weather. And I should also mention that there are a couple people from our synod here, one from our synod team, and that's Christy Meyer. So wave, Christy. Good to see you. And then I know Sandy, is it Trofferner, is also from our synod, but I don't see her on here right now. But Sandy, if you're there, just say hi. So yeah, Christy has sort of been my right hand in this and has kept good track of a lot of the things that we're doing. Another thing that we've done is book study groups. We did a winter book study group last year on braiding sweetgrass, and we had about 20 participants who met by Zoom for 8 weeks. And then this winter we did Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul by John Philip Newell. And we had, again, around 20 participants sign up for that. And we shortened it down to 5 weeks because that seemed to work better. But that's something that has really been instrumental in connecting people throughout our synod. I think one of the things that I'm most happy about us doing is our synod resolution from last year that passed unanimously at Synod Assembly. And it suggests that every congregation within the synod submit a plan, a Care for Creation plan to the synod. And what we were hoping to do with that is to find out what congregations have done, what they are doing, and what they still want to do. And that this would be a good connecting tool for them. And it would help the synod because the synod would know, who's out there and who's doing what. And then we could keep a record of who's doing what and hook people up. And I think someone else, I think it was Karen, mentioned this, that this kind of same thing is going on in their New Jersey synod, where they are kind of hooking people up. And one of the things we found out when we've had about 30 in, is that about right, Christy? We've gotten about 30 plans in, which is probably about a quarter to a third of the congregations in our synod. And we'll keep, trying to be in contact with them and soliciting more of their plans. But one of the things we found out was that a lot of people wanted to know about installing solar. And we happened to know that there was a congregation that had installed solar. And so we organized a Zoom meeting, and we had over 30 participants from our synod, and I think also from the Northwest Synod, and maybe other synods as well in the state. I can't remember, but they all came together in January, and somebody did a presentation, how it worked for that particular congregation, who to contact, and where to go. And we recorded that so that video is now available on our synod website. So many good things that are going on, but it's so important to connect people, I think. And that's kind of what we were feeling, that number one, people have to remember that they are part of creation and love it. And there you have, getting in touch with the wildness through Wild Church, or through reading books like Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul and Braiding Sweetgrass. But then you also have to remember that you need to be in touch with each other, and that you need to share what you know with each other, because this is a great tool. I mean, the whole thing, we would never be able to do this if it wasn't for COVID, right? And we didn't start all doing Zoom all over the place. So, I mean, you have to look on the bright side of things sometimes, and how important it is to share what we know with each other. And one of the things that I think moving forward is really exciting for me is a kind of a web of creation. And I know Lutherans Restoring Creation had, that was David Rhodes' kind of catchword, buzzword. We met with him when I was first on the Synod Care for Creation team years ago. And he told us this lovely story about how he had this dream about animals gathered around the communion rail, and the little raccoon reaching up his little paws, and he was talking about the web of creation. But this web of creation is a human web of creation. But from all the people who've been on the book study groups, and from all the people who've given us their email through the one-page plans, we have over 85 people on a web of creation email list, and we hope to be able, through our team, to contact them once or twice a month just send an email to them, share a positive development from a congregation, like one of the ones that have shared with us, share in upcoming activities like the Church of the Wild or the book study groups or whatever happens to be happening in our synod that's exciting. Share concerns such as microplastics. Maybe you want to hook somebody up with the Plastic Jesus from Creation Justice Ministries. And then suggest an action, maybe provide a link or a web address where they can advocate for what they believe. So anyway, those are some of the things that we're doing. And I would say that our team is sort of a gathering of representatives. I don't think I mentioned that, but I think that's pretty much what we are. So I think we're excited about what's going on. And there's my other cat, and he is part of my web of creation. So anyway, I think that's it. That's it for us. Christy, did I forget anything? Chime in. I open my mouth and words come out. So there it is. Thanks for giving me the chance to share that tonight.
Thank you, Meg. It was great to hear that, and how ambitious with your resolution to have all of your congregations be thinking about creation care. I'm so excited to see where that goes.
Yeah.
Now we were planning on switching to Q&A, but we have a surprise guest that I have to like surprise speaker, and that I don't think they knew they were speaking either. But Julia Rankin from Oregon Synod is a fellow with the Climate Resiliency team over there. And I just want to give them the chance to speak a little bit of what's happening in the Oregon Synod. And so Julia, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, hi from 5:48 p.m. But yeah, my name is Julia. I use they and she pronouns, and I am very lucky to be a climate resiliency organizer with the Oregon Synod. I am one of 3 paid staff members that work on climate and disaster resiliency. And I can tell you about the resiliency bits. That's what I focus on mainly. Charlene Larson is our disaster queen, as I affectionately call her, and she handles all of the like how we distribute resources for like unmet needs and stuff after hailstorms and fires and all of that. But towards the resiliency side of things, some of what we've done recently is we helped pass in a coalition of other orgs and nonprofits the Coal Act in Oregon, which divests our state treasury from coal energy and mining across the globe. I do believe we are 3rd in the nation to create legislation like that. We also, one of our big focuses is that we run a cohort program. We currently have 12 congregational teams in there across the state of Oregon, where each month we have one giant meeting with everyone, and then each team has an individual companion that walks alongside them to figure out what climate resiliency means in their context and how do we act towards that using a relational organizing model. So, teaching people how to organize and what that does to build power and how to create leaders in their community. And with that, we focus really on 3 planes: local initiatives, so stewarding faith communities' land, building, and energies. And then that's like also working at the level of our watersheds and in partners with our neighbors, systemic changes. So it's advocating for policies in our governments and institutions that advance climate justice. And then also a cultural shift. So nurturing that way of being for like supporting collective resilience and well-being for people, and also like for humans and more than humans, and for our planet. In terms of like where we are right now, we are wrapping up our cohort season. So we have been running this since the fall. We have some folks who are, we're helping to help them apply with getting grant funding to actually fund like what climate resiliency looks like for their communities and their contexts. And so that can be anything from like generators to disaster kits and things like that to actually help build like good, strong communities. We're continuing with the cohort model next year of some kind to continue to build power and organizers. And I think the most important thing that we like are doing and will continue to be doing is that we work actually across religious divides and structures. So I work with the Unitarian teams. There's also like, we work with Episcopals and like quite literally everyone. Our definition of like who do we engage with are people of great faith and courageous love. And that is our only stipulation. But we also root ourselves in an anti-racist lens and exist in a structure here called the Sacred Organizing House. So we are climate resiliency in the Oregon Synod is but one room, and each kind of like specialization area has another room. So we work with organizers who are not funded by the Oregon Synod, but do work in land and housing. We have a Reckoning with Racism team that does statewide work as well. We also have work for asylum seekers and Spanish-speaking communities, and then youth. And the reason that we do this work is to like learn and grow together, but also because we know that climate change impacts different communities based on social structures and injustice. And so if this is an intersectional issue, we need to be working with everyone to address it. But yeah, our method, I guess, is my last question here. One-to-ones. I am a big relational person. You need to have trust with people before you can create movements. And so, yeah, I had 3 coffee shop meetings this morning. I'm jacked up on caffeine right now. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Julia. I think that was a great way to show the spectrum that Gabrielle started us off with, as far as how many different models there are across the ELCA communities across the country. That yes, it is incredible, all of the work that everybody's doing, and it's definitely in context. And one of the things that Susan Meyer, I think it was you that lifted this up, when we see all the kind of reiterative stuff that we see with all of our websites and everybody doing, their own logos when I first started this work, I thought, well, no, we're just duplicating wheels and there's too much of the same stuff going on. No, we need to be creative. Like, that is what brings so much joy to this very difficult work, is being able to be creative. And all of us do this in our own context, and it's not going to look exactly the same. And that's the point. And I really appreciate that about this conversation that we've been able to have and hear from how many different people, yes, learn from one another, but we can't all do the same thing because we're all different people in very different habitats and different needs. So thank you for this. I appreciate too the fact that I said that we would stop recording and be able to ask each other questions on a more intimate, non-recorded type session. So I would like to offer this time to close us in prayer, to turn off the recording, but Noni had offered to close us in prayer if that was still okay. And then don't worry, we will stay on after I hit stop on record.
Let us pray. Oh God, you gather us together, and that brings us joy. For we know that this cloud of witnesses is doing your work in the world. Help us in this ELCA ecosystem, in the context of your grand universe, to care for all that you have made, to pick up one another when we're down, and to celebrate one another with all the joys and the envisioning and the creation, the creativity that comes about. Be with us, oh God, and walk with us each and every day as we seek to love what you have created and what you love so well. In your holy name we pray. Amen.